Welcome to In the Ven Zone with Christine McKay, where we get candid about what it takes to negotiate effectively. You'll learn from the challenges and successes of entrepreneurs, executives, and experts. We help you change the nature of your negotiations and get more from every deal you do.
Hello, welcome, Scott. I am so excited to have you on Negotiating in the Ven Zone. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Christine, thanks so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here and a big fan of yours.
Thank you. This is amazing. I am so excited. So for our audience, this is going to be a real treat and a real departure from how we normally do in the Ven Zone. So Scott and I go way back. We met each other over almost 25 years ago now.
Feels like yesterday, though.
It does feel like yesterday, but our children's ages prove, and the length of our marriages prove otherwise. So, Scott and I went to business school together, and I'm just really honored that he's agreed to join us here on In the Ven Zone, where we talk about helping small businesses become more successful in their negotiation, especially in what I affectionately call David and Goliath negotiations where smaller companies are trying to compete and get business from or do business with larger organizations. Scott, I'm just going to read a little bit of your background that I have here, so feel free to jump in. And correct me if I say anything incorrect, but Scott is the Chief Executive Officer of Harris Blitzer Sports and Entertainment, an organization with the mission of building passionate, high-performing teams that inspire and enhance the communities where its fans live, work, play, and win. Scott is responsible for the organization's leadership, its strategic vision, and its global ambitions. He has been a decade-long member or a long alternative governor for the NBA and NHL. He is the acting CEO, or is the CEO actually, of all of HBSE's dynamic global portfolio, including marquee teams, the NBA's Philadelphia 76ers and the NHL's New Jersey Devils. With more than 20 years of experience in the NBA and the NHL, Scott has earned a reputation as a leader of leaders and is one of the most connected, dynamic, and driven executives in the industry today. His reputation for authentic leadership, unparalleled drive to innovate, and emphasis on corporate culture has placed him at the forefront of the industry. He is also the co-managing partner and founding board member of Elevate Sports Ventures, a best-in-class sports and entertainment consultancy founded in partnership with HBSE, the San Francisco 49ers, Live Nation, Ticketmaster, and the Oakview Group. And Scott has been married to his wonderful wife, Lisa, for many years and is the proud father of 3 amazing young women, something that I share with him in terms of having 3 amazing young women as my own daughters. So Scott, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Welcome.
Thank you. I've been, for better or for worse, I've been in with big companies, small companies, and medium-sized companies. So I've had leverage, have been leveraged, have won a few, lost a few, and tied a few. And so generally, I'm excited to dig in and see if I can learn from you, the boss.
That's great. Well, I know that you had a startup in the early 2000s, as many of us were involved in startups that didn't quite necessarily go the way that you wanted it to. Tell us a little bit. I want to dive into that a little bit because
Sure.
I think, especially now, in the current, pandemic environment. Now, I know a lot of businesses that are thriving like crazy. And I think Harris Blitzer is one of those companies that's thriving in the market today for a lot of different reasons. But tell me a little bit about the experience that you had when you were in the startup and kind of how that led you down the journey that you have taken and where you're at today.
Sure. So I was, we founded a company called Hoops TV, which was kind of a convergence of basketball and hip hop culture, music, food, and everything in between. And we raised money from one of the top sneaker companies in the world at the time, and ESPN and Foot Action, and then a kind of a blue chip venture firm. We raised $15 million. We had an incredible management team. but we were way ahead. I mean, it was a video heavy platform, and there was no Wi-Fi at the time, and the bandwidth was slow. We're still in dial-up, and I thought I knew way too much about just about everything, and the world was moving fast. We went through $15 million in 18 months, and I was like out of work, out of luck, and out of money before you could bat an eye.
Wow.
We did some fun things. We became the #2 traffic basketball site in the world very quickly. We had incredible dialogue and relationships, and had found something pretty special in terms of capturing the whatever this is of basketball, and it being the center of lifestyle and culture development in society. But we couldn't figure out how to drag a business with it, and I made several mistakes along the way. I mean, mostly, and they have a lot, has a lot to do with negotiation, but. I thought it was my first time running a company. And when you run a company, you oftentimes have a vision and a view of what that actually means. And you spend time on a lot of things that don't matter, as opposed to the things that really do. And in hindsight, there are a lot of things that went wrong. But in hindsight, I think I was a collaborator in my own defeat, if you will. And that's what's the disappointment of it all. Because things are going to happen. There's going to be a pandemic. Your partner will leave. Your funding source will dry up. Your supplier will fail or fall, or the people you're selling to won't want to buy. I mean, that's the ecosystem we live in. I just don't want to be at the center of my own failure. And in this particular case, I was at the center of it. And I think, having a lot of hindsight now and looking back and thinking, man, what would I have done differently? I would have focused on 3 things: 1, raising money; 2, driving revenue; and 3, driving traffic. And I would have had the whole company focused on that instead of all the other kind of stuff in the ether that doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's really fast. And one of the things that we talk about a lot is that the hardest part of every negotiation is the negotiation we have with ourselves, the negotiation that happens in between our ears. And so what I hear you talking about is a little, if I may be so bold, just to say a little bit about, because we graduated at the same time, right? And I think all of us had a little bit of ego coming out of business school, just a tad, and it's like, and I think that those mistakes over time that humble us. And you, I've been watching the press on you and watching the press on Harris Blitzer, and it is impressive. Kind of one of the things that I admire about you as a leader is you have this very authentic leadership style, and you bring people along for the ride. And it's really impressive to see how you're elevating women within the organization and minorities. And most of our clients are women and minority-owned businesses. So we're very passionate about helping them to level the playing field and to ask for more of what they want and not be afraid of that. So tell me a little bit how some of the lessons you learned from Hoops TV have translated into where you're at, what you're doing today, and if it have impacted your leadership, because it does drive how you approach negotiation across the board.
It sure does. No, it sure does. So I've been broke or out of money several times in my life. Once I was, born into a family of no means. And so that's oftentimes the best way to be broke, because you don't know any different or differently. And then a couple times throughout my life, and this was one of them, I left Hoops TV. I still had school debt. I didn't have any money. Anything I had, I'd put into the company. And I was emotionally a total train wreck. So I was not prepared to get back and work. My wife was a stay-at-home mom at the time, had just left her career. So it was a fascinating time. And I thought a lot about kind of with self-reflection. I had 60 some odd people working there. They were all, including my brother and some of my best friends in the world, all joined me out of work, out of luck, and out of money. So I definitely did not want to go through that experience again. And I have always had a high kind of compassion or empathy level for people, and have fallen in love since a very, very early stage in my life in terms of culture and teaching and leadership and development. And it's kind of what gets me out of bed in the morning. One of the things that gets me out of bed in the morning. So I think a lot of that was very influential in terms of how I lead now. In terms of the diversity front, I I was raised by a really strong woman. I married a stronger woman, and I'm raising hopefully even stronger women.
Yeah.
So I've been surrounded by really incredible women my whole life. And so and as a father of teenage girls, when the boys come knocking, and they do, the girls are smarter. I got that right away. And so and I truly believe that a diverse organization makes you stronger, more talented, and more flexible. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way in terms of my style. I'm a type A loon. I like that in terms of the order of things. I managed a certain way, which was I put you on the spot quite a bit. We were up on our feet. You had to be sharp. You had to know what you meant. You had to be able to debate and share your opinion. And what I found out about that style is when I had my third daughter, who's introverted, and that's not her style.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was having a really hard time as a father connecting with her, and a really hard time moving her. I want to talk about negotiation.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read a bunch about introverts, and what I discovered was, they're a lot more intuitive. They have better ideas. They're oftentimes more creative. They're oftentimes better problem solvers. But what they couldn't do is survive in an organization I was running. And so for me, a lot of my reflection was, okay, what is the alpha culture is different than an effective culture. And so for me, I focused and pivoted at that point and said, okay, let's create a really different type of organization. I was at the National Basketball Association league office at the time in New York. And I set out to recruit a very diverse team, and it was fun. And we made, I set a policy in place really quickly, one I've had since then. That was in, 2001. And when I started. And so every position had to have half the final candidates had to be diverse. So they couldn't be white men effectively. It was a bias against white men. And after time, it takes time. You can't snap your fingers and create a diverse environment. This doesn't work. But over time it does, because generally we're generally spend time with people who look like us. So most of my friends are white men. It's just the case. It doesn't mean I don't have diverse set of friends. Of course I do. It doesn't mean I don't have women who are friends. Of course I do. But generally speaking, we're more comfortable with people who look like us. And that's oftentimes where we live and where we congregate. It's just the way it works. And it happens in hiring too. And so when you have a diverse team, it's easy because you're the women will hire more women, and African Americans hire more people that look like them, and Asian and so Hispanic and so. And so once you have diversity at the top in hiring positions, diversity becomes easy. It's how you get there. And the way we were going to get there at the NBA, and then later at Madison Square Garden, and now at Harris Blitzer Sports Entertainment, is that we do just that. Is when I walked into HBSE, we were 75% white men, and at the VP level or above, we were 95% white men. And we look now, a short 7 years later, and white men are no longer the majority. And that's great. That's progress, and it's not an accident. It is not. And the question is and I'm not into charity. I'm a capitalist. Okay. I'm not doing this because, go team, girl power. I believe in girl power. It's not my thing. I am a feminist for sure, but that's not why I'm hiring women.
Right.
I'm hiring women because I think it makes our organization smarter. I'm hiring African Americans because I think it brings diversity of thought and creativity that we didn't have otherwise. Because if you have the same ideas with the same people, with the same mindset and the same framework and the same experience, you are not going to come up with creative solutions to complex problems. And guess what this world is? Exactly that. Exactly. So we've been fortunate enough to as I look forward, we've got 12 women SVP or higher in our group, including the woman who runs our building and our chief operating officer and our chief marketing officer. It's an incredible group of women, and I'm really proud of it. I remember going way back. This young woman, a sales manager, came to see me who was a man, and we have a very it's a fun culture. It's a hardcore sales culture that it's a kind of has a root for each other quality about it. So it's not a kill or be killed. It's quite the opposite. It's somebody sells something and everybody celebrates. And that type of environment invites women to be very successful. So oftentimes our top sellers are women, which is another great source of pride. And it's unusual in my business, in the sports business. And so our sales manager came to me. He says, "You're not going to believe it. This woman wants to leave." And I said, "Wait, what?" She's, we have sellers that do $100,000, and she was one who was doing $1 million. So losing a top seller is hard. And she said, "Look, I look up. This is my 6th month on the job. I look up and there's nobody I want to be." Whoa. So it was great. It was a great, quick eye opener. I met with her the next day and just said, "Hey, you got to be patient with me. Like I'm 6 months in. I know you've been here for 3 years. Things are going to change here, and you're going to see an incredible slew of talented women here. And in many cases, moms." And I know that's not PC to talk about, but I think working moms are the competitive advantage. By the way, and I tell every mom that comes in and every dad that comes in, I'm a dad. I coach my girls in basketball. I will leave to coach them. Yeah. Like if there's a school play, I'm at the school play. That is what I have decided to do. I'm going to role model the type of organization that I want. And it's up to you to role model it for the people who work for you, because they're looking at you. I've got an organization of young 20-somethings. Like they're looking all the time. What is he wearing? What's he doing? How important is family? Are you bringing your kids to a game or not? Are you working till noon or till midnight? Are you out doing things you shouldn't do? Or are you living the way you say you're going to be living? Mm-hmm. And I think we all have an opportunity as leaders to represent that. So that's my full circle story of what I learned along my path of destruction.
Well, I think that's awesome. And one of the things that you talked about in one of the other interviews that I watched was how, I think you said at the time you had players on I think it was on the 76ers that were from 8 different countries.
Yeah.
And,
5 continents. 5 continents. Can you imagine that?
So a desire to have, your organization reflect both the diversity of your players, but also the diversity of your audience, I think is really incredible. And I think in small businesses, this goes back to the negotiation that we have with ourselves. A lot of small businesses and entrepreneurs are like, well, I've got to work, 7 days a week. I've got to work, 20 hours a day, and we do this to ourselves. And as we bring people into the organization, that negotiation that we're failing to have with ourselves is also then affecting the people who are working for us, because they're not going to speak up if what you're doing is out of line with their value system, because you're paying them. And so it's like they're going to just think that there's no other alternative. And so I think it's really awesome that you do that, and that you reflect. I'm curious how you've reflected that same level of diversity in your supplier base, in terms of who are some of the companies, the smaller organizations that you've done business with that have been really successful partnerships for you along the way?
Great question, and a pretty complicated question for corporate America. We just instituted 3 months ago what we call a Buy Black program. So what we learned, once again, is traditional companies who are larger and generally more experienced. And if you look at corporate America, it's generally managed by white men. Mm-hmm. And so our program is designed to level that playing field. And so what we've done is we set targets, and we've offered up things that I think provide smaller businesses opportunity, like different payment terms, different delivery terms. And so when you were talking about earlier, there are some smaller companies that can't quite hit the benchmarks of the larger companies. And we're trying to eliminate those. What's interesting is that it will be more expensive for us as a company. Mm-hmm. That's the fact. The risk profile goes up a little bit. What we're trying to do is, I said one thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is developing talent. The other one is to leave the world a little bit better than I found it. And I'm very fortunate. I work for Josh Harris and David Blitzer. They have wonderful, beautiful hearts, good family guys, and they have the same interest in making the world better. Mm-hmm. And so we just invested in a housing community in North Philadelphia, a tough part of town, and a community center, adjoining community center. And we added this Buy Black program, knowing that there's going to be, you know, a bit of an adjustment for us to get there. It's a work in progress. Kind of all knowing that if we can help lift up minority-owned businesses, I think the world's better. And I think in the end, it will play out, I hope, to our advantage. We hired an incredible chief diversity officer, David Gould, who's helping shepherd us through how this all is going to work. We actually also offered 5 free, we haven't handled any of them out. So if any of you are listening and you're in and around the Philadelphia, New Jersey, New York area, free sponsorships. So 5 free sponsorships to promote businesses, diverse businesses. Again, I don't know if it will help, but it's certainly not going to hurt. And it might give businesses a platform and a lift to not only be part of our Buy Black vendor program, but also to get some promotion in front of a different audience to hopefully drive their business forward. So we also, we have an innovation lab. I believe we have 35% of our businesses are female or minority-owned businesses. And so we're investing in businesses that need a bit of a helping hand. And so we think we're doing our part. Like I oftentimes don't talk about this stuff publicly much because I'm very proud of what we do and who we are. I always know we can do better and we can do more. And so, so while we can look back and say, yes, but you were doing very little and now you're here. I was like, yeah, I'm here. I want to be here, you know? So we have a long way to go. And I certainly don't like patting ourselves on the back. But at the same token, like I have people that are doing incredible work and trying to do our part. The thing about sports and entertainment is we have a pretty special place in society. Like we can influence and impact kids. Like, so that's one of our missions. We can actually move politicians because the voters, they come to our games. And so we have influence and we like to use that for good. And so to the extent we can make a difference and do our small part, we want to do it. And we've got to move as a society. We have to move to kind of putting our money where our mouth is.
So you'd made a comment earlier that kind of in light of what you just explained kind of strikes me. So you talked about not being a charity, that you're a capitalist first, and you want to do the right thing. So I'm really curious, what was it? How did you guys decide what terms in your relationships and payment terms and delivery life cycles, et cetera? How did you guys get to the point where you made the decision on what kind of things were going to be different for this pool of suppliers versus your traditional pool of suppliers?
Right. So we went back to those that are making the purchasing decisions and asked them to walk us through some different scenarios. So we just to understand why these certain vendors keep winning. And then David Gould, our chief diversity officer, went out and spoke to John Harmon, who runs the African American Chamber of Commerce in New Jersey. He's a good, longtime friend of mine and a good source of incredible wealth of business and knowledge. He connected us with several small businesses, and we just started asking questions. I think it's a lost art, you know, the asking questions. Yes. We're all very fond of talking, but I think, you know, the lost art with young people I've seen come into the business. I remember when I came into businesses, I used to hear, no, young people can write, you know, that's what I used to hear. Now, I guess I'm like the old guy now. So I would say that, you know, there are 2 steps we miss. One is doing the work. So whether it be a negotiation or otherwise, you have to do the work. David Stern, the former commissioner at the NBA, who I worked for a long time, he was great at saying, do the work. And I find myself saying that now. I'm like, do the work. Like, you have to do the work. You walk into a negotiation. I don't care if you have 5 employees or 50 or 5,000. You walk into a negotiation, you better know where you're going to be trading off. You better understand the person you're negotiating with and what their perspective is and what's going to be important to them, because it'll be very different from what's important to you. And you have to put a financial value on what those are, because you're going to be trading off in real time. And so do the work. And I think the second and lost art, and I think some of that is like, we can shortcut everything because information is readily available to us. And so, but I would say like that will never go away, doing the work.
I agree.
And
100%.
like information is widely available, but what information matters and how are you preparing for it? And then the second thing is just the art of just asking the right questions to the right people at the right time.
Yep.
And oftentimes you have to gain trust, and oftentimes you have to walk on coals to get there. And it's not, there's no perfect solution and answer, but there's no like sales or negotiation. It's not like the movies, you know. It's just, it has nothing to do with like, I got it, you know. It's like, no, it's really like authentically understanding what the framework is and what you want to accomplish and what they want to accomplish. And I don't believe in like, not everything is win-win either. You know, I that's just not the way life works.
No,
you know, and so
I agree.
Yeah, when I was younger, I was, you know, like, I don't know, it's a bad word. I was going to say killer. It's a bad word to use. I was a tiger. I was very aggressive. As I've grown older, I've become less and less of one of those guys. I've learned more. I had this executive coach. Her name was Trisha Nadoff, and she was amazing and brilliant and smart. And she runs a company called MRG, a great company. And she kept saying, I was probably, 29. I was president of Madison Square Garden. No, I wasn't 29. I was 39, 38, 39, something like that. And she kept saying, you've got it. You're like a warrior. I'm like, yeah, I want to be a warrior. You know, she said, no. You're running a company now. You can't be a warrior anymore. I said, yeah, no. That's exactly what I want to be. She said, no, you got to move from warrior to sage. Like when you make that transition, your life's going to get better. Yep. You're going to be more effective at your job. You're going to be able to recruit better people. You're going to be able to drive performance better. But you think the way to drive extraordinary performance is for you to kill, it's for you to go do it. And I was like, yeah, because I like to do that, you know? Right. And it's really interesting as I look back and think back now. And ironically, she was a friend of my mom's. So that's how I came in contact with her. But boy, what great advice, just in terms of even walking into a negotiation, you go kill. Now I'm thinking about that 3%. I leave the 3% on the table, the last 3%, consciously, you know, like it is a long, long life in a really, really small world. Right. And so while I don't believe in that every negotiation is win-win, it's not. No. I also don't believe you need to leave that small business, you know, halfway in the ground, you know, so I don't think that's the way that business works. I believe the way that's the way life works. But I'm in the kind of business, and not everybody's in my kind of business. I'm in the kind of business where I'm in a community. I need a lot of businesses. Yep. And I need relationships with them. And we're going to grow together in different ways. And I have different things that I can walk them through. If it's like one of our companies in our venture lab, or one of our innovation companies, or our esports company, or our sports marketing company, or one of our teams, or a venue, and all the, blah, 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 goes on and on and on. It's like, this to me is about like, how can I create strong relationships so that, we can do business together forever. And part of that is making sure that they're successful in any deal we do. Like, even if it's a win-lose situation, because those come up.
Well, and it's interesting. So you just hit on a bunch of things that when I'm speaking about negotiation, I talk a lot about. One is I used to get into arguments with my professor, Jim Sabinius. I adore him. He was amazing. But I used to always tell him that I thought the notion of win-win was kind of crap. And as I started working with more and more large companies across the globe, what I saw, especially when they were dealing with smaller businesses, is that this concept of win-win became kind of I'm just going to tell you that I'm a partner, but I'm really going to take you to the cleaners anyway. And if I leave you, halfway into the ground, to use your term, that's okay, because my switching costs aren't that high, and I'll just find another supplier. And large companies do that all the time. They go through small businesses like they go through Kleenex, and it's frustrating. It's painful to see. And the smaller businesses, I see them making mistakes where they'll get a large customer. And in the .com era, it was always, we got to have this marquee account. We got to have this marquee account. And the marquee account will often drive you into bankruptcy, because if you are doing everything to satisfy that one account, you lose sight of what your own mission is and what is going to propel you to success. And you're not able to adequately service all the other customers that you have, because you've put everything, all your eggs in this one basket. You've convinced yourself that you have to do whatever this big customer tells you to, and you don't. And that's not a win-win, nor was it ever the concept of what win-win is talked about in Getting TS, the book that was published by Harvard, and is still considered one of the best vanguard books of all ages on the topic of negotiation. But I used to get, so I also am not a win-win. At the end of the day, when you walk away from the proverbial negotiation table, somebody usually wins a little bit more. Right now, there's also this phrase that everybody uses, customer for lifetime. I want a customer for a lifetime. And I talk about renegotiation, because it's like, okay, that's great. If you believe in a customer for a lifetime, then you need to be willing to renegotiate your relationship over time, because I may have won more at the table initially, but that deal may stop working for you. And if I care about you as a supplier and I care about the longevity of that relationship, then I have to be able to meet you part way to make adjustments to that deal if at the end of the day it's not working for you. Me and Keith have been married for 27 years, and the marriage, the deal we entered into when we got married is not entirely the same deal.
No, it's not. It doesn't even remotely resemble it. Yeah,
exactly. Because you and Lisa have been married for a long time too, and it's like
25 years. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you don't allow your business relationships to adjust and grow, and you force each other to stay where you're at, then that doesn't serve either of you in a negotiation and in a business relationship.
I agree, but there is a balance. I mean, you have to be a fiduciary for your company.
Yes,
I mean, that's
absolutely.
And so the balance is just that. And I think that sometimes, could be lost. That part's not lost, but the how you navigate it and what you take and what you win, it goes back to that core. It's like, have you done your work, and do you actually know what really matters to you and to them? Because oftentimes there are deals that are fair, and if you have leverage, you're going to get a better deal. We have this company Hydrant that's doing business in Walmart now. It's like came to us, they were doing $5,000 a month, and all of a sudden they're in Walmart and 2,700 stores. And you're like, holy moly! Yeah. And so yes, there is pressure on their business. There's pressure on their supply chain, but they wouldn't trade that opportunity. And does it, is it great for them? Of course, it's an unbelievable opportunity. But sure, they have to adjust and stretch and learn. And this is a very smart group. They'll grow and they'll figure out how to optimize it. But who has leverage in that? It's 100% Walmart and 0 to Hydrant. And I think Walmart's smart enough to understand, hey, if we crush our upstart suppliers, we're not going to ever have any innovation. So they've done a good job in making sure that they're working with them so that they have innovative products coming up from from startup companies and emerging companies. But I think that's hard for some of us as we're going through, and most of us are in an ecosystem. And so, and the ecosystem could be your industry or your community or your city, or, depends on what ecosystem, matters to you. And the world is swirling around you. And so and it's more interconnected than ever before. And so I think, I guess it would be different if I were a private equity guy and I bought a chemical company in Texas, and, I have no connection. I'm never going to buy another chemical company. I'm completely removed. I can make different decisions. In our business, it's different. Every decision we make because of our business could end up in the media. Every decision we make has ramifications to the next person we'll do a deal with. Every decision we make with a partner or a client or a supplier will impact other partners, suppliers, and customers. And also we have all these other businesses that we have to work across, and hopefully they're working across with us. And so I think that as the world gets more and more complex, those with the hammer, if you will, or the 300-pound gorillas need to work more effectively with the companies, or what will stop in the end is there'll be no more Main Street for sure. And there'll be a lot fewer innovative ideas and innovative companies. And that's what this world needs more than ever right now.
I agree. And I mean, you hit on kind of, I want to go back a little bit to what you were talking about in terms of your style as a negotiator and as a manager, because managing is a lot of negotiation. right? And so whenever you're trying to influence people to do something that's in your interest, right, you're negotiating. And so we call that a champion style. So, and we call it a champion style because champions like to win at all costs, and they're warriors, and they go into the negotiation, I would say, ready for battle, and they're armed and they're armored, and they want to win at all costs. And I was talking to somebody just the other week, and I could tell that this man had encountered a lot of people with that negotiation style, because he like clenched his fists and he closed his whole body off. He's like, how can you talk about negotiation? It's so combative. But for me, negotiation is, I think, the same as what it is for you, which is about relationship. And at the end of the day, that business relationship ends up not being, yet there's fiduciary responsibility is huge. You have to make a profit, and you have to acknowledge that your counterpart also deserves to make a profit, right? So I've got big client. I have a client that I just closed a deal on. That's a real estate deal, and they made the small retail company $1.25 million in revenue. It's just, this woman owns a kids clothing store on a main street in a small city in the Southeast. And her landlord is a $12 billion market cap company. And I'm like, and these guys are just like, they just don't want to deal. They don't want to, they're just really been difficult. And they don't have that same view because they have these big box retailers that occupy huge amounts of their space. And so my client, this little retailer who has a single store, $1.25 million a year in revenue, they don't care about her. And that relationship is just not important because they see her business as disposable, that they can find a replacement for it, even in the current market anyway. And so I love that you talk about relationship and the work that you're doing around the Black Buy program. And I think that's amazing. And I commend you for that. I see you very much as a vanguard and kind of leading some of those things in your industry. And I think that's amazing. So
thank you.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about, so do you have a negotiation story that you can tell of a negotiation? We have a few minutes left where,
Sure.
You think you didn't like how it turned out. It was not a good negotiation for you. And what were some of the things that you learned from that, and how could that benefit some of our listeners?
Okay. I mean, I've had so many that have gone south, but I'll choose a couple. I'll give you a recent one. I've been in spending some time in China before COVID, but I've got an incredible team of deal makers. And so Adam Davis is one, and Sunshine Rogers is another. And Sunshine is Alan Shi, who works for Sunshine. And so they're Chinese born, both live in the US and work with us. And they had teed up a deal. And so it was a company called Dafang, which won't mean anything to any of your listeners, but effectively it's the top arena, stadium, seat, stage, and lighting manufacturer in China, which is a big company. They do some business internationally, but would like to break into North America, and saw us as a conduit to do that. Mm-hmm. And we spent quite a bit of time with them. I mean, I spent time with Mr. Fang's, his family, his daughter, his wife. We went to dinner, went to his house, spent time in his office, and even visited his show places in Beijing and Shanghai. And then he came to Philadelphia, and we did, spent quite a bit of time together. And certainly through translators, he speaks better English than I speak Mandarin. But we, even that was a learning experience, just the delay, and actually it's exhausting because you're thinking through everything. Everything takes twice as long, but a wonderful experience, wonderful family, brilliant businessman, good business. And then, we have a president that, evaporated relationships with China and the US, and they took our games off the air, and things went south in a hurry. And to be effective in China as a big business, you need to make sure that you respect the the government's wishes and their direction. And the deal evaporated. I mean, this is 6-9 months, maybe 9 months of work.
Mm-hmm.
And I was excited. Like I liked him a lot, and I liked, we aligned on values and direction and vision. And I thought we could actually help him launch his business here at a pretty high level. And it was like, I learned a ton through it. Sometimes, if I wish I certainly, there are things we could have done differently in terms of pace and moving quicker. I definitely could have done more upfront in learning about kind of the cultural difference of negotiation, for sure, which was an adventure. And then 3, the big learning is sometimes this is out of your control. I mean, the world is moving really quickly. And I think sometimes, you have to do the best you can with what you have. And sometimes deals go south. And I had one friend of mine whose name will remain nameless because it's not a great story for him. But he was talking about a mutual friend of ours. And he said, I don't talk to him anymore. He doesn't do any business with me. And I kind of raised an eyebrow and I said, wow. He said, well, why would I spend time with him? And I'm thinking, man, oh man, I'm a long life, small world guy. Like I'm going to stay friends with him forever, Mm-hmm. And I'm sure if I had his philosophy, I would not have stayed connected to Mr. Fong. And as the world is opening back up shortly, I imagine we'll have another interesting conversation to see, and no deal might happen, but I think it gives us an opportunity for that type of thing, if that makes any sense.
And I think I agree with that. And I think that you never know, you're only one person away from something great, right? It's that you never know what that relationship is going to bring in terms of personal growth or professional growth. And so I agree with that. If we kind of discard people because they don't meet a certain need for us right now, then we've robbed ourselves of the opportunity to, I think, be better people. And I think that I've worked and negotiated in 53 countries. And I think one of the things that I love about international negotiation is that people are people everywhere. And we care about the same things. I don't care what government somebody's part of or lives under or anything like that. People are people. And I think when we approach in our negotiation, when we approach people knowing that we care about the same things, we want roof over our head, we want our family to be safe and healthy and happy. We want to contribute to society. We want to be, we want to be seen as contributing to society. And once we acknowledge that, I think a lot of our differences just go away.
I have to tell you a funny story that reminded me of, which is going to sound like I'm patting myself on the back. So I'll try to not make it sound like that.
It's okay to pat yourself on the back.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure. So the first time I met Mr. Fong, we were at his office, and it's kind of an outer province. And I noticed his daughter looked about my daughter's age, and I said, hey, through the translators, is that your daughter? And he said, yes. He said, she actually goes to school in the US. And I said, oh, no kidding. Where? He said in Brooklyn. And I didn't remember doing this, but he brought it up, 6 months later. I took out my card and I wrote my cell phone on the back. And I said, hey, could you hand this to your daughter? I'm an hour from her. If she ever needs anything, like medical, school, escape, a homemade meal, a secondary mom to come see, like, just take this, whether we ever do a deal or not. And like, I've forgotten I did it, but like, I would want someone to do that for my daughter, Mm-hmm. And so it's one of those stories that when you talk about like breaking down, he came back 6 months later and was telling a story that my translator was telling me while he was telling a group of his board and his investors, that's the story he uses. Like, this is, essentially, like he said in Chinese, like, he is one of us, which I thought was like such a night, it's exactly what you want to hear about yourself. Yeah. As you're building a relationship. And I'd forgotten the story, but anyway, that's the kind of thing that I think makes your point.
But I think as small business owners, a lot of small businesses who do business overseas, especially if you're somebody who's just starting to expand internationally, I think that's something for oftentimes, especially Americans, we sometimes forget. We set ourselves up on a pedestal as a society, and we forget that other people are just like us because we pass judgment on them for some reason because they don't live here, didn't grow up here. And it's like, don't do that. Just acknowledge
it's so
it.
true. No,
Right?
you're so right. I was speaking at this conference called Leaders. It's an incredible conference for leaders in football. It's a soccer conference. And I was speaking with my brother. My brother's just incredibly creative. We're very different. He's one of my best friends in the world, Matt, his name is. And he was speaking on brand and building brands. He used to run the brand for the Cowboys. And the guy who runs the conference was introducing us, who I've known for a long time. And he introduces my brother like, Matt O'Neill is one of the most creative minds in the world and blah, blah. He's incredible. He's built this and done that and done this. And he said, and his brother, Scott, well, he's very American. Maybe. I was like, oh man, what an intro. Thank you for that one. Anyway, tough one in the center of London.
Yeah. But I think we learn over time that goes back to that negotiating with ourselves as we grow. If we allow ourselves to grow and we allow ourselves to be influenced by the things outside of the world that we just live in and that we just see, it makes our lives much richer and it makes us better business people. And
it sure does.
Successful across the board. So awesome. Well, Scott, I want to be really respectful of your time. This has been wonderful. I have loved having you as a guest here on In the Venn Zone. Thank you very much. How can people follow you?
You can follow me on Twitter at Scott O'Neill. I'm on Facebook. LinkedIn is kind of an easy one for me too. Scott O'Neill. Would love to have. I have a book coming out in June.
Oh, tell me about it.
Called Be Where Your Feet Are. It's a life leadership book about being present and some things I've learned along the way. So if you're interested, copy coming to you very soon.
Awesome. I cannot wait to see that. I have so many friends who are authors that I'm always buying books. My husband's like, please stop buying books. I'm like, I read every one of them.
Okay, well, I'm rooting for you more than you can imagine. Keep doing your incredible work. It makes a total difference.
Thank you very much, Scott. I really appreciate it. Have a great day and give my best to the family.
Thanks, you too. Great seeing you.
Cheers.
Bye, Christine.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of In the Venn Zone with Christine McKay. We invite you to visit our website at www.venn.zone to access the show notes and other helpful resources. Empower the negotiator in you and successfully level the playing field. Join us again next time here on In the Venn Zone.